What's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another Top 5 Friday. You know, when you were growing up and you were renting a game probably 80 to 100 Fridays a year for a couple of years straight, it seemed like anyway, you're going to play a lot of games. Some of them were bad, and I've done another video about that, but there were a lot that were awesome as well. I like to think that I had good taste because I could read Nintendo Power, see what was going to be cool to rent. So I wanted to do this video about top 5 game rentals. Now, the issue is, there's a caveat. Obviously, my favorite game rentals are going to be the ones that I've already talked about in my top 5s, or in some of my top 20s, top 20 NES games, top 20 Super Nintendo games. This Top 5 Friday is going to be my top 5 game rentals, excluding the ones that would have appeared on those lists already. I don't want to talk about the same game in 2 different lists. Anyway, let's get to it because I've rambled on more than I should have. And there's a cat, and he's telling me to wrap it up. Oh, also, this video is sponsored by Joe Redifer's Stupid Head.
Oh, it's Friday night. I don't know what I'm gonna do tonight. I could sit here and pick my nose while I watch a brand new video. Whoa, Top 5 Friday. Top 5 Friday tonight.
Alright, the first game on my list is probably the most unique, and that's A Boy and His Blob. Boy and His Blob. When I saw this at Jar Nintendo, the video game rental store that we would go to, I was like, wow, that looks kind of different. It looked intriguing. I actually wanted to play it just from the box alone, because how often do you see a game with a big giant blob on the front? And let me tell you, I was so confused. You know, I was used to action platformers, and this certainly is not an action platformer. It's a giant well, the first stage is a huge maze. You're a boy and you're accompanying this blob, and you're basically, from what I think I remember, you're trying to get him back to his home planet, and you feed the blob different flavors of jelly beans. And each flavor of jelly bean will cause the blob to morph into a different shape that will help you get past wherever you need to go and get through the stage. This game was definitely one of those games that would benefit from the use of Nintendo Power. Anything from what different jelly beans would cause the blob to do, it was definitely fun to experiment and have this blob following you around and becoming these different things. But as I was playing it, I realized very quickly that I didn't know where the hell I was going. Because this is, think Metroid, this is Rat in a Maze, huge underground cavern, and you don't know where to go and how to get past certain things. So I had to get the help of Nintendo Power. My friend happened to have, well, this issue of Nintendo Power right here that I borrowed, and there was a giant map, which was a lifesaver. And this issue of Nintendo Power actually became one of my favorites, by the way. But without this map, I would not have ever gotten past that first stage. And with its help, I still never got past the second stage. It's always been one of those games where I've gotten to the second stage, but not any further. There's this point where you have to roll there's this point where you have to turn the blob into a bowling ball and roll him past these cherry bombs that come down from the trees. I swear I got to that part at least 5 to 6 times during the course of playing this game, and I could never get past them. I would get blown up. And so it was always an accomplishment to get to the second stage, but I wouldn't do much once I got there. And it's haunted me ever since, I guess you could say. But anyway, I still put it on this list because I had a great time with it when I did have it. And I'm very nostalgic for it. I'm very nostalgic for it. The next game on the list is, I'm wanting to say, I could be completely remembering this wrong, but I'm wanting to say it was one of the first Super Nintendo games that we rented. Smash TV! Super Smash TV! I was never good at this game, but for whatever reason, it's one of those games where you keep dying, you keep sucking at it, but you want to keep playing. Kind of like Robotron. I really like Robotron, so this is Robotron, but for the 16-bit era, essentially. This was a very unique way for me to play a game on a controller, the way the buttons were laid out. X shot up, A shot right, B shot down, and Y shot left. You could get all kinds of power-ups and weapon upgrades that could get you through these hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies. You're essentially this contestant on a game show to basically survive and accumulate a bunch of money. and VCRs, because we used VCRs back then, so that was a thing. I could really see the influences that went into making this game. Anything from RoboCop to the I'll buy that for $1 guy, to Running Man, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that nobody talks about, which is amazing. This game is absolutely action-packed, but what really sets it off and puts it in really a higher level for me is the simultaneous two-player action. Me and Chris played the hell out of this game for a weekend. Now, the one thing I will say about this game is that it does get kind of repetitive and somewhat redundant after a while. You just kind of... It's one of those games I like to say it's good in small doses, really fun in small doses, in fact. But after a while, you kind of get bored with it. But I'm still going to put it here on my top 5 rentals because, hey, we had a great time with it. Now, this is a game that just missed being on my top 20 NES games, and hell, you ask me a year from now, it might actually be on it. This is G.I. Joe. At this point in my video game playing days, I really wasn't watching G.I. Joe anymore, for several years actually. So when I rented this, it was more of, hey, this looks like it'd be a fun game, more than, hey, this is G.I. Joe, I want to play a G.I. Joe game. You can tell that a lot of time and effort was put into this, and it wasn't some kind of lazy cash-in on the franchise. You take control of 5 Joes from the start, and you can switch between them on the fly, kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The great thing though is each one of them has their unique abilities. I really liked using Snake Eyes because you could jump the highest, and it was really easier to get out of certain situations. And plus, Snake Eyes was one of the few, besides Duke, that I knew of still, because at this point, G.I. Joe had a bunch of characters that I didn't know who they were, so I really liked using Snake Eyes. I mean, Blizzard, give me Snow Job any day of the week. Also, in an RPG kind of fashion, you can upgrade these characters' weapons and maximum health as you go through the game. There are 6 different areas in the game, and each one of those areas consists of 3 different stages. The first stage in each area is pretty much a run and gun Contra style game. The second stage in each area, you're going around trying to plant bombs, and so you're having to explore a maze-like stage, and those can get pretty tricky at times to know where to go, essentially. And you have a time limit, which I can't stand time limits. And the last stage in each area is another run and gun part. And of course, at the end of each stage, you fight a boss, and some of the bosses are really cool, imaginative, and I recognize the ships back. There's some of them are really cool ships that I used to actually have toys of. A lot of them not. They were the newer Joes, but some of them I recognized still. Anyway, it was a really good game, and I highly recommend you check out G.I. Joe. Alright, the next one on the list here is Alien 3 on the Genesis. Alien 3! That's right, I played a few Genesis games back in the day as well, and this is one of the better ones. Or Chris had actually gotten a Sega Genesis for either Christmas or his birthday, I can't remember, but every once in a while he would bring it over to the grandparents and we would rent a Sega Genesis game that Friday night. Alien 3 on the Genesis is a completely different game than on the Super Nintendo, which I really like because I'm not going to get the Sega Genesis game if it's the same version on Super Nintendo. Like Aladdin, these are 2 completely different games and offer different gameplay mechanics and just experiences overall. The Super Nintendo version to me got a little bit more of that Super Metroid kind of like atmospheric vibe going to it, whereas the Genesis version is just more straight, just action, get through the stage and really just kind of try to survive any way that you can. Unlike the Super Nintendo version where you're going around the different stages trying to fix the base and do different missions like that, you're just trying to save the captives, essentially. And there's a time limit, and when that time limit goes off, the aliens actually burst from the chest, which I always thought was kind of cool. I was hoping to see that in the Super Nintendo version, but of course, Nintendo of America, that's a little too graphic for their liking. But in the Sega Genesis, they don't care. You're gonna see aliens busting out of chests, and that's awesome. And actually, funny enough, that was the one thing that really grabbed me about the game, was the fact that it was a lot more graphic than the Super Nintendo version. In my opinion, it is a much harder game. The aliens come at you much more aggressively, quicker, and there seems to be more of them. And that pesky time limit. I mean, that time limit got me so many times. I can't stand time limits. I understand why they did it in this game, but I just don't like them. And the graphics, they look really good. One of the best looking Sega Genesis games, I think, for that style of graphic palette. whatever. Anyway, Alien 3 is definitely a good, and if you've only played the Super Nintendo version, check out the Genesis version. Alright, my number one game, my number one rental as a kid. Now, I didn't want to include this game on my top 20 NES games because I didn't want to have 3 of the same franchise. 2 was enough. And this game is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Cat, I told you to stop! From what I remember in Nintendo Power, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 for the NES and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 for the Super Nintendo were announced at roughly the same time. I remember seeing them at the same time, and I was super excited. I was like, wow, they're coming out with 2 more Turtles games. I was ecstatic. Now, one thing I cannot remember, I mean, I can look up this info, but hey, why look things up? I can't remember how soon 3 came before 4. I remember renting 3, but I remember owning 4. And so I don't know how many months apart that was, but when 3 came out, I'm pretty sure it didn't fall on, hey, it's someone's birthday, so we ended up renting it. And I really liked the game. I really liked Turtles 2, obviously, so Turtles 3 was like more of the same. And in fact, a lot of people consider it a lot better than the arcade game. I'm not going to say that because, I mean, nostalgia for me wins over when you're comparing the two, but Turtles 3 does stand on its own as being a really, really, really great beat 'em up. Hell, you know I like this game because look, there's a poster of it. What's my favorite poster out of Nintendo Power? And I actually had this on my door. I'm pretty sure the game is longer, and for me it's a little bit harder. I don't know if they upped the difficulty on this one, or I just didn't play it as much as the arcade game, so I'm not as good at it, but I just felt that it was slightly harder, but it could be my imagination. Now, the one thing that was really cool about this, but also kind of sucked, was each turtle now had their special moves, their special attacks. The bad thing about it is it took away energy, and I've never understood that. What's the point of using a special attack if it just takes away your energy? I guess if you're in a situation where there is no escape and you have no choice, it works great, but it's definitely something I rarely used. And the premise of the game was kind of cool too. Shredder actually takes Manhattan Island and raises it up into the air, and well, I mean, it's your job to save the day, of course, because you're turtles. But it's really fun. I mean, if you like beat 'em ups, if you like the first, well, not the first, if you like the second Ninja Turtles game on the Nintendo, oh fuck, God Almighty, I like Ninja Turtles. Now, like I said, I still love the arcade game slightly more, but these days when I'm playing a Turtles game, more often I'm playing Turtles 3 when it comes to the NES. And I think that's just because it's a little fresher. I didn't own it like I did Turtles 2, so it's kind of like a newer experience in a way, even though it's an old game, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But thank you so much for watching this video, making it to the end screen. This end screen right here makes the video do much better. So thank you if you made it all the way here to the end screen. That means a lot. And we got different links and videos and stuff, so it actually will be really awesome if you want to watch another video, or click one of these links right here. There's Patreon and DVD links and all that good stuff.